Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2 Point Monday pregame show live. My name is Kyle Senra, and the Fab Four all here again. Try and go 4 weeks in a row of this. We've got Gladys, we've got Dr. James Freddy, we've got Dan. The B League says, "Everyone doing?"
Just great, fantastic.
Doing well. Happy birthday, Dan.
Yep. How you going?
So,
I am.
Is that what the B stands for today? The Birthday League says.
It does. It does this show.
Yeah. I'm a very special boy.
That you are. That you are. No.
Special show for you today.
Special every week, but this week it's your birthday. So there you go.
That's it.
That you are.
I have, and I am, and it's been a good 30-something years.
Awesome.
Yeah, here's to 30-something more good years.
Yeah. Let's just get through to December.
At least.
Let's just let these props hit.
Oh yeah, that'll be a celebrate because unfortunately we can't celebrate injuries too much, but that is what we're going to start with talking as we always do before we get into the Monday night preview. But of course, anyone feel free to drop in any questions in the meantime, and we'll just answer them, especially fantasy football questions. I suppose you can ask any type of question, but yeah, fantasy football show after all.
I won't answer birthday questions. How about
that? Okay.
All right. Done.
That's fair.
All right, so we won't even give birth to those questions at all. Just
wow,
just kill it like the jokes that I.
Really like start doing a jump and go, and I just could do that. Okay, never mind.
Does not miss.
Yeah.
Where should we start?
Let's start with the guys who are going to play seriously.
Right.
Let's start with because that's a complete like I haven't seen the line move since Baker and Kareem and Chubb, but let's start with them against the Broncos Thursday because it's that quick turnaround.
Yeah, I like that. So, we got a couple of things going on. So I guess we'll start with the quarterback. So Baker Mayfield already had a torn labrum from dislocating his shoulder previously, and he dislocated his non-throwing shoulder again. So as of right now, he got an MRI, and they're getting a second opinion, which means they definitely found something. But for now, they think he's going to be able to play through it. It does bring up issues of instability. So there's an increase in the chance that he could leave in the middle of the game going forward. And every time he dislocates it, it gets more unstable, and that increases the chances even further. So I think he's probably going to be able to play unless they found something really significant on the MRI. But if you have him and you're starting him, then you have to keep in mind that he could leave in early in the game or in the middle of the game at some point like he did this week, basically at any point from now until he gets it fixed. And that could really be a problem for you.
So if I were a defensive player on the opposing team, I'd just target that shoulder every play.
Well, in a way you don't have to, because anytime he gets tackled, he's got a 50-50 chance of landing on it. And that's probably what's going to happen anyway. So he's really just got a target on his back there. And anytime he gets tackled or he takes a hard hit, that's what happens. And unfortunately, it's an injury I've dealt with personally, and it was on my throwing shoulder actually. But it's like, you just trip over something and hit the ground and your shoulder pops out. And even if it doesn't come out all the way, you stretch the ligaments, you can tear the labrum again, and it just becomes unstable. And it really hurts, by the way. And I think Baker Mayfield said after the game, he's like, it just feels like crap. And he's walking around in a sling, and he's got to play football in 3 days. So that's not an enviable position to be in.
Who's their backup?
Case Keenum, I believe.
It's a revenge game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm for whatever they did to Case Keenum.
He's going to put 100. He's going to put 190 yards and intercept a fumble and a rushing touchdown on him. It's going to be great.
To be fair,
14 points and 87% of your fab. Go for it.
All right, so play Case Keenum this week. No, I mean, just revenge game. I mean, they weren't the Broncos the only team to pay him as a franchise quarterback? Didn't they buy a house in Denver because he was so happy with how they were treating him as a franchise? So I feel like this is one where, if anything, it's a revenge game for the Broncos because they paid Case Keenum
back. Exactly.
They paid Brock Osweiler a house at a little bit more too. They shouldn't be asking for tenant refunds. I know that much.
Good point.
But as Gladys hinted at with the Browns, it's not just Baker. I mean, that entire backfield's hurt, right? I mean, and Baker might be the healthiest of them, and we're talking about he can miss any game at any point.
You're not wrong there. You're not wrong there. So, Kyle, I know Nick Chubb kind of surprised us last week. He showed up on the injury list with a calf injury, which kind of came a little bit out of nowhere, and then ended up being deactivated. So he didn't play this week. He didn't practice today, but they're kind of saying that maybe he's going to be available. I'm not so sure about that, but they haven't put him on IR yet, so that's the good news. Let's focus on Kareem Hunt, and then we'll come back to the rest of the backfield mates. So Kareem Hunt left the game with a calf injury. They already put him on IR, so that suggests a partial tear, a grade 2 injury of his calf, very similar to what we saw with Michael Gallup in week 1. So he's out for a minimum of 3. I think this is probably a 4 to 6 week time frame. Best case, it could be more. Michael Gallup, if he does come back week 8, that'll be 7 weeks that he's out, and they're not even sure that he's going to be able to make it all the way back yet. So, this is really scary. I mean, if I'm a Kareem Hunt manager, if I have him on my team, I'm considering I'm going to be without him for probably going into December. So that's a long time. So that leaves us with potentially D'Ernest Johnson and Demetric Felton as the 2 guys toting the rock for Cleveland on Thursday. And, this is kind of interesting to me. I want to get your guys' take on it because there hasn't really been a lot of love for these guys as far as free agent pickups, I guess because they're not really household names or anything like that. But I don't know. Maybe there should be. We've certainly seen any number of guys who weren't household names become household names because of injury opportunity. So just wanted to get your guys' take on that. If Chubb does end up missing the game, we already know that Kareem Hunt's going to be out. These 2 guys are the last men standing, and bye weeks and injuries with other guys are hitting. So what do you think?
I think it depends on Mayfield's condition. I think it depends on who is under center. I'm not jumping to get either one of them, but it's definitely a run-first offense. Will it remain that way? It remains to be seen. But they need some wins. They need to pile up some wins in that division. So if you are hurting, like there's 6 teams on buys this week. There, so many people are going to be hurting. If I would, D'Ernest Johnson would be my first choice if I had to have one of them.
Okay, yeah, and some people might. I mean, think about Khalil Herbert last week, where he was kind of a speculative pickup because he got a partial share of more than we expected when they lost Montgomery, and then who was the guy? Damian Williams came in. Now Damian Williams hits a COVID list, and all of a sudden Khalil Herbert's last man standing had a pretty good game. And I'd say non-dynasty players probably didn't even know who Khalil Herbert was until about 3 or 4 days ago, or a week and a half ago. So, yeah, definitely something to consider. Both of these guys, they could get a pretty significant slice of that work.
I tend to lean on there's only so many backup running backs you want before, you look at it and go, this guy is not good, right? And now you've just dropped fab money or waiver priority on a running back. I understand that the scheme, and Gladys said it perfectly, that's a run-first team. At some point, that's not going to be helpful, right? In the Browns offense, and if, again, like Gladys said, if Baker Mayfield's all right, I'd rather go the opposite way and grab Donovan Peoples-Jones because you're looking at Odell Beckham. Yeah, Odell Beckham's hurt. Landry's working his way back. Their tight ends are fickle at best. Okay, they smashed against the Chargers this week. Nothing. Peoples-Jones has been popping up a fair bit, and to me, Broncos they got exposed by the Raiders this week, right? Edwards was all right. Ruggs was pretty damn good. They can be had by the right team, and Mayfield, he's not bad. He can dissect the team as well as what Derek Carr can, right? So for me, if I'm going to rely on D'Ernest Johnson because I'm hoping maybe he breaks one away, I'd rather go get the guy that's out on the field most of the time, and at the moment, it's going to be Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. There's only one problem. Donovan Peoples-Jones doesn't play running back.
Sure, but I get it. But you're looking for productivity, right?
If I'm a fantasy football player, I'm looking for productivity at the running back position.
If you're struggling,
if I'm looking for wide receiver productivity, then I could definitely see going for Donovan Peoples-Jones.
We're about to talk about a Browns wide receiver as well, aren't we?
What's that?
We're about to talk about a Browns receiver in a minute. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're all in a bit of trouble, but I don't know. Like I look at D'Ernest Johnson. I picked him up in a few places this weekend because. I saw during the week knee and wrist.
Because it was that bad.
No, I mean, also knee and wrist for Kareem Hunt. Like,
it was questionable.
That was known prior. That was questionable up until the game, and I thought, well, all right, why not add him in a couple of places? I did that with DJ Dallas as well. Fine, but do I want to play him on the short week against Denver? No, and would I want to drop my fab on him? If you're that desperate, maybe you've got to, but. I don't know.
I think those are the people that I'm talking to. If you're that desperate, you might be. I know on a couple of teams that I have, I'm desperate's a good word. I'm getting pretty desperate.
I'd be a bit more okay with it. I'd be okay with it if they were playing on Sunday, and I saw a little bit more. The short turnaround bothers me a little bit more. Where I know with at least Peoples-Jones, the last 2-3 weeks, you go to the Kansas game, wherever they played, the Chargers game, and now this week. He's working his way to be a bit more prominent.
I love it.
It's a running back issue, but
I love Donovan Peoples-Jones call out though, and we haven't even talked about Odell Beckham. And
the bigger question: I mean, except for like the Tom Brady's and the Josh Allens, are you playing people on Thursday night if you don't have to? I mean, that's a short turnaround for everyone. And everyone seems to be hurting.
I played Lombardi Lenny, and I had somebody play him against me, and it worked. It was the best of times and the worst of times. So sometimes you're in that position, you don't have a choice.
That's what I said. If you have a choice, are you playing Thursday night people?
We got 6 teams on the bye this week.
Right.
And those teams, when you look at them, it's like Buffalo, Tennessee. Who else is there? I think
Pittsburgh.
Dallas Chargers. So you got a lot of explosive offenses.
There's some big names out. So I understand where maybe crap, I've got Ezekiel Elliott out and I just lost Kareem Hunt. Maybe I need to pick up a guy to I understand the significance of that. But at the same time, like if they were playing Sunday, maybe I'd feel a bit more comfortable knowing what my options were. To start D'Ernest Johnson when you don't really know if they could lead with Felton, and you go and pick up Johnson. Now what? Like, we're in a bit of trouble. I'd feel a bit more better about it if they were playing Sunday.
Okay.
Just a little thing.
I get it.
Six good teams on the bye is a tough one.
Yeah, I do want to address that, Gladys, because I almost do the opposite sometimes, especially with so many. This week was a bad one for players being questionable. Like, it seemed like, right. I remember going on DraftKings one day. Outside of Eckler, every running back had a red Q next to their name, and it was we're going to play a lot of Eckler this week. That didn't, but it was a trap. No, but I think if I'm kind of iffy on a night player, I usually tend to put them in because I know this player will be active later in the week. Even if they don't do well, I'll be too many guys are hurt, and I someone enough just to fill a lineup spot with some random player. If I've already got the player on my team, it's clearly I believe in that more than others. So if I'm kind of iffy on a player for Thursday, not so much like health wise, but like or not, I actually tend to lean to play the Thursday night guy because they're playing. Whereas the rest of the week, that's still 3 days where even if a player's like fully healthy, but what if they get hurt? I'll like Akers riding their bike, I guess. Well, it depends where you are, but like a little cold to ride bikes up here in Canada, but like they could get hurt on a day off at any point, right? Like that's like humans are fragile. It's supposed to hire medical health field dedicated to the fact that humans get hurt and we have to heal them. Non-football players, right? I think there you go. I tend to. I'm hearing your fear, like, okay, the short turnaround, is there less production? The thing is, less turnaround for the defense too. Does that lead offensive production? So I tend to, like, I don't know that I've seen any research that correlates to Thursday night is less fantasy points per game than non-Thursday night. Like, it seems like football's random. Some games are high scoring, some aren't. So I tend to go with the we're playing on Thursday more than a even if a player's not questionable, just for that knowledge. But that's how I kind of lean to it. I've heard the opposite. I've heard some people say, don't play your Thursday night players because you don't get flexibility later in the week. But my thinking is, what if your flexibility is the fact that I get to play this player now and then wait on a couple other decisions in my lineup? So that's kind of how I tend to go. The way I see it, if a logical too, if a player puts up a massive Thursday night game and you have to see that on your bench the entire week, that's worse than if a player doesn't do well, because you expect at some point in your lineup a player's not going to do well. Okay, this is the guy, but nothing's worse than leaving all those points on your bench. So I tend to maybe it's a little too much into the psychological game, but I tend to like Thursday night players.
Well, I'm talking about not if you have him already. I'm talking about just picking them up and using a waiver wire priority and using FFAB money for them. Like if I have him on my bench, if I have him in the roster, I'm going to play him if he's healthy. But this week, I mean, you have, or next week, week 7, you're going to have what? Moss, Singletary, Zeke, Pollard, James Robinson, Austin Eckler, Cook, Madison, and Najee Harris all on a bye. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like pretty much the top 20 running backs. So it's going to be a stone throw. It's going to be you just have to face that unless you playing a 6-man league.
It's a Ronald Jones week.
Dan, I think you called the name. Wouldn't you just rather have, even though without Russell Wilson, you might rather just have the third down back in DJ Dallas, thinking he's probably going to be out there for passing downs and receptions dump-offs than either Browns player. So I think DJ Dallas is probably a better investment to make fab-wise if they're available, if he's available for either the Browns players. Go ahead.
Spoiler, I think we're going to talk about DJ Dallas soon as well. There might be some Alex Collins news. I read the show sheet.
And that's part of it. He might also be up for an expanded. As for, the one thing last thing I want to say, just between Felton and Johnson, if you are going to pick them, it's going to be tough to know the timing. I think if Chubb's playing, you'd rather have Felton because he's probably going to be out there catching passes just because, like, he might even be lined up as a wide receiver more often than he's in the backfield. And, Jonathan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, Felton, Rashad Higgins, that might be their 4 guys at tight ends, but who knows how that production goes up and down. But if Chubb's out, definitely want Dearness Johnson because he seems like he's going to be the guy that's going to get carries. The trick is, though, you might not know if Chubb's going to be active by the time you have to set those waivers. So I think I would go with Johnson just because I think he was ceiling. If Chubb can't go, he's probably going to see 15 to 20 carries. And with that Browns line, which is ranked second in the league right now in adjusted line yards, according to Football Outsiders. So good offensive line. To your point, Dan, like if Johnson gets a touchdown, like it might be a goal touchdown where you get 6.5 points in the play or 7 points. But if Donovan Peoples-Jones catches a Hail Mary touchdown, that catch alone is worth 10, 11 points. So more per play with the wide receivers.
Yeah, I think.
But we can talk about because we're going to stick with the Browns. Apparently,
we'll get there. We'll finish off the Browns, but I think it's a good point just to talk about conceptually, like what feels good about like picking up these guys. Like sometimes you really don't have a choice, and you just got to roll the dice. And like for me personally, maybe it's just a philosophical difference, but if I know you're going to be out there, especially at running back, if I know you're going to be out there and playing, I'll take a shot on you. And sometimes those hit and they hit big. Those are the times where you have the most ceiling for guys that you've never heard of all of a sudden becoming household names. It happens more frequently than not than other positions. And sometimes that's how it starts. You just have to roll the dice with some guys and hope for the best. And you may be sometimes being in that position of like, I had to start this guy and look, he blew up for 30 points. Like that happens too. So moving on to Odell Beckham, not a whole lot to say about him, except that he hurt his shoulder and had to leave the game. There's no real info other than he didn't practice on Monday. So just kind of be on the lookout for that. And as we've been talking about it, it's a quick turnaround. So they're playing on Thursday. Some more information is probably going to be coming out within the next, if not tonight, then tomorrow, seeing what he does in practice. But, it's definitely concerning that just because he had to leave the game and because it's Odell Beckham. So, I really do like the Donovan Peoples-Jones call. If he played running back, I'd like it even more. But I definitely think there's a lot of merit to it.
Well, yeah.
Gladys, you gotta start bringing the dogs on camera. We want to see them. The people want to see them.
He's like, okay, I can't even right now. He's like a slobberfest.
The people.
Yeah. Yeah, he's drugged and he still won't lay down.
We love it.
And I guess for a receiver, and I guess AC joint is what knocked McCaffrey out for the rest of the season last year, but like it seems like if it's a quarterback on their non-throwing shoulder, they can kind of get away with it. But for a wide receiver at AC joint, you always need your hands to catch. So I guess Beckham can catch it one-handed, but
right.
Like that's So what's your thought? Do you think he's going to play or not, Doc? What would if you had to guess?
Yeah, gun to my head, I feel like just because he left the game, he didn't come back. Like that's scary, and it's a short turnaround. Like that's scary enough for me to be like they're going to hold him out, and especially if I'm not even going to say that. I don't know. My gut feeling is he's not going to play. Like he didn't practice.
I'm kind of feeling that way too.
I just feel like it's going to be one of those where he's questionable, and then they deactivate him on Thursday. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'll put the gun to my head on Monday night and say, do I think he's going to play? That's my educated guess.
Yeah, football's violent. I don't think anyone's putting a gun to your head though. But yeah, I would guess as well. But that's educated guess because you are the doctor. So we can move on.
I can be wrong. I can be wrong too.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, of course. And again, that's best guess at this point. The more information you have, the better you can make that guess. And right now, we don't have much. So, do you want to talk about the Seahawks running backs just because we already have referenced them?
Yes. So
I don't know if there's much we have to talk about Carson. I mean, we talked about
there isn't much except to say that it looked like he was doing well. Pete Carroll said he was going to be back on Thursday. It didn't happen, and then lo and behold, he ends up on IR. So the earliest he could be back is week 10, and no guarantees there. So that is not great. So I guess the question that I have for you guys, like thinking about Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, that team is 2-4. They're in last place. What landscape? Go ahead.
Don't the Jets have their first pick next year because of the Jamal Adams trade, or am I off on that?
Yep, you are correct. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, man.
Yeah, good old Jets.
That's right. Pete Carroll would know what to do with a first round.
Hey, he's the best player in the nation. He's the best player of the nation.
So they're 2-4. So what's the landscape going to look like for that team if they keep losing games and these guys come back to what? They could be like 3-7 or something like that. I mean, stranger things have happened. But so that's Chris Carson. He's on IR. He's out till at least week 10. Definitely getting worried that we may not see him again for any multitude of reasons. Like I said last week, nothing's changed. In fact, it's actually the outlook has gotten worse because they IR'd him. Let's talk about Alex Collins. So Pete Carroll said he was unsure of his status, which is better than what we usually get, which is that he's fine, he's great, and everything's going to work out, and then he ends up
IR
on
the
IR.
next day.
Yeah, right. So with him, we just got to watch the practice reports. It doesn't look like it's anything serious, but Rashad Penny looks like he may be back this week. The aforementioned DJ Dallas and Travis Homer would be the next men up if Collins and Rashad Penny don't play. So I think they're really interesting too. And I think that was a really good prospective pickup by you, Mr. B-League, to grab DJ Dallas in whatever leagues you did, because he may end up Khalil Herberting his way into some pretty significant fantasy points if these guys can't go, and they may not be.
Yeah.
Do we have?
It wasn't. It's so hard to gauge. Again, I get to tune in every other episode, right? And to hear we don't know what's going on with Chris Carson every week, that's kind of telling, right? That's the tell. That's go get someone from that roster. It doesn't. If DJ Dallas wasn't there, I'm sure I tried to grab Travis Homer. That's what you got to do. You got to get pieces of it. Same thing with Cleveland. I understand with Cleveland. We'll go back to it. Mate, I grabbed Johnson because Hunt was out. Maybe Chubb misses more time. You got to get pieces of it. I understand too, but it's Pete Carroll week again, and I don't see Carson coming back this year. Why would you bring him back? If they're 2-8, why would you bring him back?
Yeah, and that's what we may be facing, and that that's the thing that concerns me. In addition to his injury, because we saw T.Y. In fairness, we saw T.Y. Hilton come back from it, and I was concerned when that happened in the whatever it was preseason or early season. He was getting surgery. It's like, okay, this could be it for him. But he made it back, and then we'll get there. But he got injured again. So the good news is he didn't hurt his neck, but he hurt something else. But he did make it back. So Chris Carson could come back from this, but the Seahawks are so bad at that point, and they're essentially playing for next year, that they elect to not bring him back because they did sign him to a 2-year deal. So they still have an investment in him for next year. It's not like he's going to be a free agent.
I think Rashad Penny is potentially going to be like he might be like I think he's scheduled to be activated off the IR this week if I'm not mistaken. Like he's someone that if he comes back, like his explosive running style, like I know it gets hurt all the time, but when he's on the field, he seems to show that. So that's one if Carson's going to be out most of the year, maybe Penny becomes the point, especially if Collins is hurt. So So I guess again, pay attention to what that's going to look like this week.
With this whole backfield, it's worth mining for gold and churning. You just got to watch practice reports and you kind of got to try to handicap it yourself because we know for damn sure that we're not going to get any reliable information out of the coach. So this is one where you really have to do your own research and pay attention to it and be willing to move on something because you might get lucky.
My favorite one this year is going to be, and it's going to happen every week. It'll be next week. The Seahawks have brought in Duke Johnson for a trial run. Duke Johnson.
Well, how many practices Duke Johnson been to this year?
That's
a good question.
Jacksonville, Baltimore, Buffalo. He's been everywhere. Kid's been about.
Rams even.
Yeah.
No one likes Duke Johnson.
Yeah.
We thought the Browns were disrespectful to him to never give him enough carries, but at least they let him on the team.
What's the line? This is what I want to know. Who's how many running backs are going to have to get hurt where they're like, okay, now Duke Johnson is the guy that we're going to go. You know what I mean? It's like he's right. It feels like he's right there. Like he's right on the cusp of
Bell's already on teams.
Has to be the guy.
Listen, I would have said the Johnson's making a team before Bell is, and that clearly wasn't the case. So I have no idea, man.
We know very well Pete Carroll's a creature of habit. So if he hasn't given a call to CJ Procise first before he goes to Duke Johnson, something's gone wrong. There's probably a Christine Michael in there too. But,
is Marshawn Lynch still eligible to play? Has he gotten a phone call? These are the things I wonder about.
He's working for the NFLPA now, so at least he's about. But it's just where's TJ Yeldon? They're going to give TJ Yeldon a call. TJ Yeldon and Duke Johnson have been brought in for a practice, and then whatever, we'll roll with someone else. No good.
Richard Hoffman saying Diggs or Sanders. Does it really come to this? I know it's disappointing this year, but is this something people are actually considering? Now, if this is a decent, I get that. That makes sense because I'm assuming Sanders is not as high priced as Diggs. Yeah. But if this is straight up season long, I know Sanders has been performing, but I'm not benching Stephon.
You do not want to have Stephon Diggs on the bench when he goes 11 for 160 and 2 touchdowns. That is not going to be a good time.
Yeah, no. That could come any week.
And that could happen at any time.
I'm playing Diggs.
We had a couple props that will help with that. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to that eventually. So, Doc, you already referenced T.Y. Hilton. May as well jump to that. So it's not a neck, but now it's a quad strain, it seems. Famous quad injury.
So that was there's a lot of good news, bad news. So didn't hurt his neck. Came back from the neck injury, which was great. Didn't hurt the neck. Hurt the quad instead. Looks like he's, quote-unquote, feeling better. We're just going to have to watch practice reports on this. The positive report on Monday is great, but we have to keep in mind it's still T.Y. Hilton. So, this is kind of what he does. So, no guarantees with anything here. I'm still, moderately concerned about this. But, he's shown the ability to be productive when he's in there. And the Colts also lost another one of their wide receivers, which looks like it's a more significant injury. So Paris Campbell went out with a foot injury. So I'm going to ask you guys. We've been working together. I think it's almost been a year now. So I try to educate on this show. So if I tell you that somebody has a foot injury and that it's serious and they're a football player, what is the thing that you guys are worried about the most?
Liz Frank.
You guys agree?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's really good. I mean, you guys at least
not good if Paris Campbell has it.
So for all you out there,
that's how we know what a Liz Frank injury.
There you go. For all you guys out there watching, listening, when you hear foot injury, you hear football player, you hear it's serious, the number one thing I want you to be worried about is a Liz Frank injury. That's a little ligament in the middle of your foot that just kind of holds the whole foot together. So if you don't have that working, that's a big problem. And that might be what Paris Campbell is dealing with. And if that's the case and it's torn, then he's done for the rest of the year. Best case, if it's a Liz Frank and it isn't torn, then he could still be looking at a couple of months, maybe longer out. So, Michael Pittman, Zach Pascal, T.Y. Hilton, if he plays, like all these guys get elevated up. The Colts don't look now, but they're not looking terrible. Carson Wentz is making a lot of Eagles fans happy because he's going to get them. A top 10 pick if he keeps this up.
Mo Alley Cox, Jack Doyle, this might just mean more tight ends as well, as opposed to just going after the receivers too. So those guys, if they're on waiver wires, I think Mo Alley Cox has put a good games together, seeming like he's kind of becoming that number one tight end for them. He's kind of surpassed Jack Doyle. He started the year off as the guy that was playing more snaps, but now it looks like Mo Alley Cox is being an every week starter at tight end just because then we're that desperate for tight ends. I guess next we could go to Washington. There's a couple injuries there. Antonio and Terry McLaurin. It seems like with Gibson, this is something we've known about, and this kind of was a ticking time bomb that did this go off, and how bad is Gibson field for? I guess the question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So let's talk about it a little bit. I think when it was initially reported, they talked about it being a shin. Now they're saying it's a calf. So he may not have one thing. Maybe now he has two things. But he's getting an MRI, and we're at this point not sure whether this is kind of a mild Dak Prescott-esque calf strain where we're looking at maybe 1 to 2 weeks, or is this a Michael Gallup, Kareem Hunt calf strain where we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks, maybe longer. And then that begs the question, are his shin splints getting worse? And are they going into, a shin splint in and of itself is damage to the bone where the muscles attach on the shin. If that happens long enough, then you can get something called a stress reaction, which is a partial break of the bone. And then if that continues, then you have a full break in the bone. So this is always happening in the background too. So now he's got a calf. He's got potentially worsening of his shin splint issue or his shin issue. Their bye week is week 9. There is a possibility that he's out through that bye week if this turns out to be even just a mild calf strain or a mild type injury. So he misses a couple of weeks. He misses the bye week, and then he's back after that. So speaking of guys that are relatively unheralded, Jared Peterson. Let's add him to the mix of guys that could be getting a pretty decent run. Everybody knows about J.D. McKissick and his pass-catching acumen, but he doesn't really run the ball that often in that offense. He's, the pass-catching guy. And Jared Peterson would probably step into more of the Antonio Gibson role if he misses time. So how does that land with you guys?
It might also be because one thing they have been giving McKissick kind of like the goal line carries. So this might just mean that J.D. McKissick becomes a full-time workhorse. But in that case, Patterson would still be worth picking up because he's the main backup. So this could propel him be a top 12 running back weekly.
Even sorry, I just saw
without Alex Smith throwing a bunch of dump offs.
Sorry, I just saw a tweet. The Washington football team are bringing in Duke Johnson for a trade. Where's Adrian Peterson? Bring him back.
Oh, that's great.
It's gonna happen.
And let's see, who is the other? I know the Washington football team's got a couple of guys, but
Terry McLaurin's hamstring.
Oh, right. He ended up playing. Did he have a flare of that? I think he ended up coming out okay.
He's all right.
Unless I missed something, I think he's okay.
Plays the Packers without Jair Alexander next week, so you're going to start him no matter what anyway, kind of regardless of matchup.
I think you kind of have to
see how many snaps week. I'm just Washington. Oh yeah,
95%
Kansas.
snap.
That's who they play.
95%.
Sorry, Dan. How many?
95. You went 8-4-28. So you just
so normal workload type thing.
Yeah, give or take.
All right. I know we want to get to the props. Let me rapid fire it, and then I want to talk Giants wide receivers with Dan because they're all injured in one way, shape, or form.
Again?
Again, yeah. And Yeah, so we'll
Dante
get
Pettis
there.
week.
What's that?
The Dante Pettis week.
Yeah, maybe.
What about
what
about John Ross?
Maybe they trade for Donovan Peoples-Jones. All right, anyway. Dak Prescott, calf strain, looks like a grade 1. They're on a bye this week. He's hopeful, and it sounds like he probably will be back for week 8. We might even get Michael Gallup back in week 8 as well. The San Francisco 49ers quarterback saga continues. Looks like Trey Lance is out for now. He did not practice today. Jimmy G did. Looks like he's got the leg up to start this week. We'll see how long that lasts. Christian McCaffrey, Matt Rule is going for the Pete Carroll Fake Injury News Award. Says that he's back at practice doing well, then promptly goes on IR. So, way to go there. Way to go there, Coach Rule. So he's
I do
out
have a
until
question
week
about that.
9. Yeah.
So was it a hamstring injury originally, or is this a new one?
By my understanding, this is just the same thing that he must have re-aggravated it in some fashion.
Wait, hang on. Are you saying that a guy that came back from a hamstring injury early could re-aggravate a hamstring injury, the same one again?
I know it's crazy to think about, right? Like that would never happen. That would never in a million years would that ever happen. But here we are.
Wait, so you're telling me? Wait, I'm trying to follow along. A guy that had previous structural damage, a year later has soft tissue injuries. A year later, and they tried to let him come back early, only to put him on the IR again.
As unbelievable as that scenario that you just laid out is,
do you know why it's believable?
Seems like that's what happened.
You know why it's believable? Because I read the damn book.
Apparently, Matt Rule didn't. He broke the number 1 rule.
Yeah, we got to get Coach, if you're listening, send me your business address. I will send you a free copy of my book. Injury Stuff, but your fantasy team doesn't have to, because
Amazon.
Speaking for myself and all the Christian McCaffrey owners out there, stop the insanity. Like, we need to help you. I want to help you. I'm willing to spend my money, give you a free copy of the book on my dime. I'll even mail it myself. You need help, Coach, and I'm willing to help you. I'm willing to help you on behalf of myself and all the Christian McCaffrey team owners out there. We all want to help you to help us. Help me to help you. Help me to help you. Help me to help you.
I guess the Ravens.
What did you think was going to happen, though? What did you think was going to happen? Nah, you'll be fine. Just run it off. Well, he tried, but then he tore it again.
Well,
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I guess the Ravens could use. They've had a lot of injuries to the running back position, and that keeps going.
Yes, that is
Latavius Murray.
Man, that is a transition for you. Thank you. So Latavius Murray hurt his ankle, and we actually had a Devonta Freeman and Lev Bell sighting. I mean, both of those guys scored touchdowns this week. I mean, is that just, you want to talk about insane scenarios that actually came to fruition? Could you imagine if somebody put a bet on that before the season? Like, I think they own the Bellagio now. Now, here's my question to you, Kyle, because I know you're a big fan. Does Tyson Williams get involved again? You remember him?
I hope so. That's that first round pick I spent. It's fucking awful. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think at the start of the year it looked sluggish, and last game kind of looked like he got a bit of that burst. But I think if those guys continue to not look so great, I could see Williams getting in. But if they're going to do the job and offer better pass protection and just better route running, and pass protection really is the big thing there. If they're going to just do that, then it's going to be them over Williams. I might make Williams active, like just don't have a choice, just to they don't have enough bodies. Yeah, but he's going to really be the third guy, and he's only going to come in maybe early down only. Be nice to get some goal line stuff. That would be like then at least some touchdown upside. But yeah, not looking great for Tyson Williams, unfortunately.
So the only thing about Latavius Murray's ankle, I know we touched on it a little bit. Not really sure if this is a high ankle sprain or a low ankle sprain. We know that those are significantly different. So just be on the lookout for more information on that. Watch practice reports. It is a little bit of a Russian roulette situation with that backfield right now, but definitely worth keeping tabs on it and maybe taking a shot at it, because you might hit pay dirt. Let's talk Giants wide receivers, because they're all injured, sort of. Kadarius Toney hurt his ankle almost immediately. Re-aggravated his injury going into the Week 6 game. Now he could be on the Saquon Barkley track, where even though it's probably a low ankle sprain, he misses a week or two. So definitely something to monitor there. Kenny Golladay missed week 6 with a knee hyperextension. Let's see if he practices. Let's see if they IR him. Have to watch practice reports there. He's not a lock for week 7. Darius
Golladay,
Slayton.
Even if Golladay plays, does anyone feel comfortable putting him up?
Has anyone felt comfortable putting him in the lineup this year? I'm not. I asked that rhetorically. I'm being serious. It seemed like he was always a question.
Yeah. And even when he's healthy, he's not producing. He clearly hasn't become the alpha that they wanted. Sorry, Dan. It seems like Sterling Shepard is the number 1 guy there. So yeah.
Do you guys remember?
Wait.
Go ahead, Dan.
Sterling Shepard was a top 5 receiver the first 2 weeks, though, right? Put some spec on his name.
Sterling Shepard.
Sterling Shepard had a monster game.
I played him everywhere that Washington game. Again, Thursday he was playing. I'm putting him in every lineup, and it paid off. So that's an example of where it worked.
I said it time and time again. Shepard's going to be now and always his best receiver. That's
you did. I remember you saying that last year at this time.
Yeah, and he will, and he always will be. He finds him in the. He's decent with the red zone work. He's decent there.
He gets targets. He makes catches.
He's
Johnny on the spot.
He's always open. He's never going to get number 1 coverage. It never happens. And he's always there. He always finds the soft spots. Shepard is incredibly underrated. And, not since Beckham has the Giants fan base been excited about a bunch of receivers that you think maybe they could do something. And they did collectively. They got hurt. And this is where we're at. It's brutal. But, Dante Pettis, go get him. You can hang out with
who is the other guy that's there? John Ross, the guy who set the record.
They got Dante Pettis, John Ross, CJ Board, I think Austin Mack. They will use all these wide receivers and still refuse to go to Evan Ingram because he can't catch.
Oh, man. They really have a disdain for Evan Ingram. Every time it looks like game script is going to be like, this is going to be the Evan Ingram week, and it never happens.
We got 15 days towards the trade deadline. They declined the last year of his contract. Please, just get rid of him now before he walks in free agency. Just move on. Is anyone going to trade for him, though? Go somewhere else. Is he any worse than Zach Ertz? Probably, maybe, but he's not that bad.
Don't you? I'm not gonna sit here and allow you to slander Zach Ertz on this show.
Yes, doesn't Zach Ertz
have
the record for most receptions for a tight end?
I tell you what, this is going to sound terrible, right? And this is going to sound brutal on behalf of Evan Ingram, but there's no reason why he can't be used in the same way as a Dan Arnold. He doesn't need to be out there all the time to be effective. That's the problem. Less is more. If he's out there 95% of the time and he gets 10 targets, he's dropping 7. Easy. And maybe 2 of those other touches are rushing attempts. This is it. So Dan Arnold, just put him out there 40% of the time, make it a long ball, make sure he's free before you even think about getting to him. But he's got to go.
40% of the time, it works every time.
It doesn't work every time.
Let's go back to Golladay real quick because I need to put a fantasy football spin on this. Do you guys remember during the draft that we did this year, all 4 of us, when Hamid took Kenny Golladay at some point and he had the audacity to say that was the steal of the draft? Do you guys remember that? Right after he did it, is that not the biggest draft faux pas? I feel like Kenny Golladay – his season is jinxed because of Hamid. Who does that? That's the biggest draft faux pas ever. You don't say who the steal of the draft is during the draft. You say it later. This guy was the steal of the draft week 10 after he's blown it up for you, not 2 seconds after you pick him. Otherwise, the guy is going to stink. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, you're wrong. Who's his other receivers first?
What?
Who's his other receivers?
He's got Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams.
Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Williams. The list goes on.
Let me tell you something. I'm relying on Robbie Anderson as my first receiver in this league, and I'm going 11 for 11 yards. So I'm not going to say anything about Hamid. Never.
Brandon Cooks is my wide receiver 1, I think, though. Yeah.
Because an injured Kenny Golladay is doing as much as a healthy Robbie Anderson.
That is a good point.
Golladay was a 9th round pick, so it's not like he went super early. 907. So It's still not. I mean, it's definitely not the steal of the draft. That's for sure.
No.
Deal went 2 picks before that. I think that's definitely the steal of the 9th round.
I think Devontae Adams in the 2nd round might be the steal of the draft, but that's a whole different story. Also on Hamid's team.
Yeah, so he just.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess
Sammy
Watkins
is Tyreek Hill.
Shocker, right?
What'd you say?
Sammy Watkins is hurt. Imagine that.
Oh God, no, we can't. Well, I don't have the strength for that.
Just don't even roster him.
I mean,
all the time.
Rashad Bateman is back. Sammy Watkins is out. Feels like this is relatively
droppable.
I think he's droppable at this point. Yeah, and redraft, I think he's
he
probably
droppable.
Dynasty? Me to say it.
No.
If it's shallow enough rosters, he's probably droppable in Dynasty. But
in Dynasty,
sure.
I don't know. He's on my Dynasty team, and I'm not dropping him yet. But
deep enough rosters. Right? I think we have got 24 rosters. If it's anything over 20, you're probably fine to keep him. But anything under 20, I think he's probably droppable.
Ironically enough, Hamid said that Sammy Watkins was the 2nd steal of the draft. So you do the math there.
So now we know. Let's get some of that analysis more so that everyone knows which player to avoid.
There you go.
Sorry,
we have Hamid as a guest. Be like, hi, Hamid, who do you like this year? Who do you like this week? And it's be like.
Well, we know it's not Jacobs or DeAndre Swift. I know Gerson will like that. I know Gladys, you had to deliver that this Sunday. The Gerson versus Hamid debates regarding DeAndre Swift. Those are fun.
Yeah, it's a good time. Great time.
Right.
So we talked about Tyreek Hill, but
yes.
He is hurt. Now he did enter last week questionable with this. I think it's the same quad. So obviously he played through it and he was really productive. So should we be concerned at all, Doc?
I'd say mildly concerned. So, on the DEFCON scale, DEFCON 1 out for the year, DEFCON 5, he's fine. I got him as a DEFCON 4. So he was in and out of the game, still was able to be productive. Just watch the practice reports in case anything surprising pops up, but it looks like he's going to be okay. And then real quick, speaking of Robbie Anderson, his teammate, Terrence Marshall, got a concussion. So he's in the protocol. We need to watch practice reports and the updates there. Danny Dimes had what looked like a really bad concussion last week, and he ended up playing and looks like he's just fine. So sometimes they can look bad, and players come through just fine. So it's just something you got to watch and you got to monitor.
They're gonna buy this week, so he has extra time.
Yeah, so there you go. You don't have to worry about
it. So the last 2 players we have listed: Terrace Marshall with a concussion. Damian Williams on the COVID list. It was like one where, again, no timetables. I guess with Damian, we know he just needs the 2 negative tests, right? 24 hours apart. So that we just kind of hope for that.
As long as he continues to not show big time symptoms or anything like that. If that happens, then it's a whole different ball game. But if he's feeling okay and he has 2 negative tests separated by 24 hours, then he's back.
And then Marshall, the concussion, right?
Yep.
Sorry, I should have. Finish with Marshall. I want to touch on something if I can.
We did. Go.
With concussions, I know, Doc, that's probably the hardest to predict, right? Because each concussion, it's its own kind of monster. How does it affect the brain? How does each human recover? So, I'm not even going to ask you to guess with Marshall. You see how he's going, and then once he clears, that's one where you'll know when he's clearing stages, right? In stages, they kind of announce some of them. So when you see he's starting to get limited practice participation, that means probably at most going to miss one more game, because that's probably where one of the last stages before, because you can at least have limited practice. So if he has limited practice all through this week, he might still miss, but I would expect him back the next. He's not practicing at all this week. That's when we're bound to whenever the symptom, that could take all year. I know we've seen
Shields. Remember, Marshall's on a bye.
Yeah, he's on a bye.
Okay, so it may not even miss a game.
I think at some point it'll be educational to actually. I have a list of what the 5 stages of the concussion protocol are. So it might be informative to kind of have people know what that is, and then they can kind of make their own assessments for these guys as they go through it. But for the time being, he's on a bye, so we don't have to worry about it. But whenever players have a concussion, you just kind of watch, and as they progress through the protocol, as long as things are moving in the right direction, then you can kind of predict it from there.
Doc, where not a lot of players get hurt, maybe we can go through that. I'm starting to doubt that.
We're waiting. Yeah, we're waiting. It's been a rough go of it the last 2 or 3 weeks, but we'll get there. We'll have a golden week where 2 or 3 people get hurt, and then we can talk about whatever.
So just
Dan, what did you want to talk
subject?
Sorry,
that's fine. Can someone explain this question from Huffman to me? I've been reading it. I don't understand what he's asking.
Okay. So I think so fades. I think he's trying to either say fade Sanders.
Oh,
like asking if like I don't think I would fade him. I think he's viable.
Like,
I would rather play Dick.
What's TCPT mean?
I thought it meant FanDuel.
Oh, team captain for DFS.
That's true.
Oh, it's DFS. Okay, I got it now. Now I'm back.
So anyway, so I like first. I think so. CPT meaning captain. I think normally the cap it's usually what they cost 1.5 more, but they also score 1.5 times their points. Knox has been going with the touchdowns. That probably does make sense as a captain. I'm not on FanDuel, so what the prices is, but I would assume Knox is cheaper than both Diggs and Sanders. Generally with captains, because you're upping the price, you kind of want to go for the cheaper guys. If you think you've got the touchdown prediction with Knox, I think he makes sense as a captain. And yeah, I think Sanders and Diggs are viable, and I think between them in DFS is a lot more of a question to be asked. I should have assumed it was DFS just based on the question, because again, assuming Sanders is a lot cheaper than Diggs, that might make sense to kind of do lineups with us, right? I think that if you wanted to go Josh Allen, stack him with Sanders, Knox, come around with Julio or whoever you think at wide receiver, probably Derrick Henry and FanDuel, you'd probably definitely, you don't want to not play Derrick Henry on any slate. So if it's Henry, Sanders, Knox, and then whoever else you can fit in, that probably makes sense as the foundation.
Cole Beasley could be an interesting player to pivot to instead as well. He might not be as highly added as a captain. It could be where people like what's happening with Sanders. He's had a lot of the hype, obviously with what happened last week, and a fair bit this year too. So Beasley's a name that I kind of like as a captain, because I don't think a lot of people will roster him as such.
Yeah, especially in FanDuel because I believe FanDuel is no PPR. So Beasley might get undervalued, but he could still, he still scores the touchdowns. If he catches enough passes, the yards are going to be there. So, yeah, it's a good point, Dan. Did you want to say something, Dan, before we get into the specifics?
I was saying before, obviously, so next week, obviously, in regards to Tyreek Hill, they play at Tennessee. And obviously, today's game could have big implications on how the Chiefs even line up, being 3-3 and at the bottom of the AFC West. So they have to start winning games now, because obviously the Raiders are starting to pull away a little bit, maybe a game or two. Same with the Chargers, even though they lost. You want to keep those conference games as close as you can. They're going to need Tyreek Hill out there. I'd be surprised if they're going to push him there to be there out there as much as possible, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, so let's get to this game tonight. Buffalo at Tennessee. Over under set at 53.5. The Bills are 5.5 point favorites here. Dan, lovely notes here. Buffalo have won 4 straight games by 18 or more points. The second longest streak or tied for the second longest. But they're 2-3 against the spread so far. It's the Titans, so they're it's weird. that is how do they pull that off if they've won that game by 18 or more?
They're putting up
points.
They're putting up 30 points, and teams like Miami scored none.
That's
true.
That
would have had that would have had an over/under implication of 42. So they put up 31, 35 points, and Miami score a field goal like they did the other week, or they kept them blotto, right? So I think that's happened to them a little bit.
And yeah, I guess the Texans game too, right? That when they outscored them crazy. So the games where they're outscoring teams and winning, they're covering, but everyone else, they'll put up points, but also allow points.
Yeah.
The Titans are 3-2 against the spread, but those two that missed are both home games. So are they road? Bills are 1-1 on the road. And this is the first team that the Bills have winning record this year, which again, when you play a team in week 1, even if they beat you, going into the week. So, but yeah, that is interesting.
But
they played a lot of divisional games.
Yeah. Well, Pittsburgh prior to that they were behind as well. Obviously, because
the Bills were favored in that game. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know in terms of Julio's returning from the hamstring injury. I know Dan, you kind of mentioned this in the chat that AJ Brown's active. Seen a bit on Twitter that pitch count. Coaches love to use that word, but then if they're in a tight game and they'll put him in, right? So,
did you see why he was questionable?
No, I just saw illness. What was it?
Fast food. He's put out a tweet. I'm never eating fast food the day before a game again.
There you go.
And also, that Bills Titans has 6.5 favorites. It's come up a point in the last 24 hours. So it's
and I wonder if that was the questionable news with Brett. Maybe they were expecting him back, and now they weren't sure, so they've raised it, thinking the Titans won't keep up as easily.
Maybe.
Okay, interesting.
Maybe.
So in terms of the props, so we've got the prop polls, which again Dan so graciously spent his time putting up on Twitter, and the quarterback lines. Sorry.
So many retweets. Just to get it out there. I'm taking bullets for you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. But so the quarterback and all the lines you're getting. I mean, to be fair, it's your show too. So, from Bet MGM, right? Which is one of those casinos that if you, I think Doc said someone would win if they the Le'Veon Bell touchdowns. They now own those.
Yeah.
Those
Le'Veon Bell and Devonta Freeman scored a touchdown in the same week this year.
Those two bet on themselves. And now maybe both of them own the hotel now, so it's the Bell Freeman place, or ring the free bell. I don't know. There's a joke in there somewhere. But quarterback lines from Bet MGM. We've got Ryan Tannehill's passing yards set an over of 237.5. Josh Allen's over-under is set at 292.5. So the poll was each quarterback over or under. So 4 options. The poll, and I'll read these properly this week. I read them properly when I voted on them too. Didn't mess up like Lamar Jackson last week. But Josh Allen over 292 won with third of the vote. Tannehill was the next highest with over at 27% of the vote. So a lot of voters were thinking quarterbacks over. Would anyone pick either of these quarterbacks? I know I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't.
I voted for Josh Allen in the poll, so that's my official answer that I can't change.
Only twice this year the Bills have gone over 255 passing yards.
It's interesting because he's been putting up the fantasy points, but it's been all touchdowns. But again, back to the whole, this might be the best team they face this year, too. So is this the game that does force them to get to 300 passing yards?
The 53.5 implied total makes you think that they're going to have to do more than just pound it for the next 60 minutes. So you tend to lean more. I kind of go with Tannehill. If the Bills are what they are, I feel like they might have to chase. I feel like 237 is attainable for Tannehill. Allen, sure, but if they're leading and going well, which we think they are as they're heavy favorites, they might not have to throw it as much. And that 270 passing yards per game, only being over that twice, tends me to believe, he might get to that 292, but he might not have to if they're doing what they're doing. So I tend to go with Tannehill, 237.
Gladys, what are you thinking? Any of these lines
I could be wrong
that you like?
If Titans are going to win, Tannehill's going to have to go over those yards. So I would go, not that I think that the Titans are going to win, but I would go over on Tannehill because there's no way they're going to even play a competitive game if he goes under that. And I think the Titans have a competitive game in them against the Bills. You know, like you said, the Bills have a really good record and their defense looks really good, but who have they played that has a Derrick Henry and a Julio Jones and an AJ Brown on their team that could keep up with them?
They played Kansas.
Okay. Yeah. They
smashed them, though. They smashed them. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Kansas went nowhere in that game, and that's how good Kansas are. Kansas are amazing, and the Bills smashed them. Didn't matter who they had on their team.
Okay, so
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you in that regard.
Like Derrick Hill. I mean Derrick Henry. No, although the Bills have played Derrick Henry really well, so that's why I think Tannehill has to go over.
Yeah, I guess that was my thought too. Is the Bills' defense going to be good enough to stop Derrick Henry and kind of force them to pass the ball because they're not going to Derrick Henry's not going to be able to run completely rush shot over them for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns like he has been on everybody else.
Also, I know, Dan, you updated this properly because I did hack the lineup and I had to pull them out, but Josh Reynolds is inactive, which I guess means I mean, it's, Julio's back, but I think it's also a good sign for AJ Brown. If they felt Brown was sort of in and out, they might want Reynolds because he seemed like he was kind of doing better than Chester Rogers and some of the other guys. So maybe just lack of special teams means he's the odd man out. But I definitely replaced Reynolds with Chester Rogers in that lineup. So thankfully I had that.
Which is crazy to see. It came back a full point from 5.5 to 6.5 with AJ Brown being active and Julio active. So it still came back a full point, which is...
Wait, the Bills are 6.5 favorite now? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's come back a full point. It was 5.5 last night. It's come back to 6.5 with Brown and with Julio. Crazy.
Okay.
Now, just to go back to the passing yards, similar to Josh Allen, though, only 2 out of 3 games so far, or 2 out of the so far, has Tannehill gone over those yards. So it's kind of similar to Allen, where that they, more often than not so far this year, they haven't hit that number. So like BetMGM, they've got some really smart lines on them. Would almost make you tempted to pick under on both. But again, I like the over on both those quarterbacks. Again, that it's more of a shootout than, I guess, maybe not. Maybe the Bills are the best team in the NFL and they'll just trounce. I don't even know if that's a word. I'll take a chance on it, or trounce. Oh, okay, it is good, right? Chance. But we're gonna go to those running, not necessarily just running backs, but the props, so rushing yards. So Dan, in the poll, you put 3 players for 1 for combined yard. Derrick Henry at combined 114.5. The line for the quarterbacks rushing are Tannehill 15.5, Josh Allen at 6.5. Then also Zach Moss in there. Oh, rush attempts. Sorry, not yards. Rush attempts for sake. I didn't read this one properly. And then Zach Moss at 42.5 yards rushing. So again, Derrick Henry combined 114.5. And on poll, it was all overs. Did you pick the over or not? So Derrick Henry combined over 114.5 yards. Josh Allen over 6.5 rush attempts. Zach Moss over 42.5 yards. Ryan Tannehill for 15.5 rushing yards. So anyone want to pick a favorite?
I know what I like.
Yeah.
What do you like?
I mean, I like Ryan Tannehill over 15.5 yards.
Yeah, okay. It's not where I thought you were going with that.
Yeah.
4 or 5 games this season so far.
Ryan
Tannehill not got over 20 yards.
More likely than the passing yards.
I've said it before, Ryan Tannehill. This game 1 year ago, 42 yards and a touchdown. He can do it. It's different Bills defense. I understand that too.
I like it.
But it's interesting. I think he can do it.
Why do you think why do you think the line's so low on that though? Like if he
Because it's the Bills defense.
Because it's the Bills. Okay.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Maybe thinking he needs more to run that much. He needs to kind of take his chances passing as much as he can too. He's just the game script.
Red zone. Yeah. I think red zone rushing is where he's going to get it. Like,
Tannehill's going to have to go a little off script today, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
All right. Doc, do you have a preference for any of these lines?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly was intrigued by the Tannehill rush yards thing. I am kind of curious as to why it's so low, given that that's been his performance. But we know he can run. I think the interesting thing is Derrick Henry's actually catching the ball this year. So that combined yardage one isn't basically like, all rushing yardage necessarily. Like there is a pathway where he can get 3 catches for 30 yards and 70 something yards rushing, which is way under what he's been doing in recent weeks, and still go over on that. So that's kind of intriguing to me as well.
So I should add, with the Henry, when I put these props together, Derrick Henry was like 82.5. So I was sitting there thinking that's kind of feels like almost a given that he can do that. So
just
I
rushing
threw the combined yards. Yeah, just rushing. So I was like 82.5 for Henry. Seems like he could do that. It might be a tough time, but he could do that. So I throw the combined in there. Just he could get 114.5 by himself, just rushing.
Sure. That's kind of why I like it, because there's multiple pathways.
He very well could. So like and again, like we saw that Seattle game, right? 6 for 60 or whatever he had. Like he could do it. So it's interesting to see. I feel like that might even be a little low, despite what he faces tonight.
So he just rushing, he's hit that 3 times. One of the times he didn't hit it, he had 113 rushing yards against the Colts. And
there we go.
And put in 31 receptions to cover. So on the poll, I actually voted for the Henry combined just because
makes sense.
If I had saw that as a number, I probably would have hesitated, but still think he can hit that rushing. So for me combined, I thought it was easier one. In terms of the poll, this was incredibly close. Like all four options had at least basically a quarter of the vote almost to themselves. 27% for the Moss, 42.5 yards, 27 on the Tannehill over, and then 23% for the Henry combined, and then the Allen rush attempts. So is there, my quick question, is there any of those lines you wouldn't pick, like you'd pick the under on?
Yeah, I don't think I like Allen over 6.5 attempts. I'd have to double down on what his average is per game. The attempts for him, I just think I don't think he might.
9, 5, 4, 6, 11. So
he's all over the place.
2 or 3 games, but 3 he hasn't. So
if it's a shootout, you think he might be on the move. That's the thing. If you think this game's going over, he might be on the move anyway, like Tannehill. So that could well go over as well, I guess. But that was the only one that I looked at and went, I thought 4 or 5. I thought, yeah, okay, 5 attempts, that makes sense. 6, maybe, but we'll see.
I think it almost go against the Moss line. Like if you believe it's going to be a shootout and Allen will run that much, so you like Moss at 42.5 yards. You probably think he might get more, like he might be more involved in the passing game. Last week where he had more receiving yards than rushing yards, he would have hit that over on receiving, but not over on rushing, and against the Chiefs, right? So if that was the game script that you wanted, it was funny, where they were leading and he still only got 37 yards rushing. So that one's a little scary. If I had to pick an under on any of them, I might be Moss, but again, it would be tied to that Allen. Like I feel like you almost pick the under too. If you think they'll run over the Titans and it won't be a close game, then you think Moss will go over. Won't hit that because he won't feel the need to run. If you think it's close, more running for Allen, maybe less running for Moss. Does that logic work?
So Zach Moss is Benny Snell. That's what you're saying.
Zach Moss is way better than Benny Snell, but okay.
Why?
Oh no, we just
better talent,
why?
or why?
So much
Why me or why Dan?
Why Benny Snell? Why do we have to bring Benny Snell on this?
Benny Snell's minding his own business. He's like, well, what do I do?
I know.
Lash out at the Rams, dude.
You want to bring up Kenny Galladay? You want to bring up Dante Pettis? I gotta shoot at something. Benny Snell.
Okay.
Randall Cobb had 0. Played him in a bunch of spots, so you can roast Cobb all you want.
Josh Gordon didn't even play. Damn it.
Well, I mean, did anyone expect him to do well? Like, let alone,
I did.
I don't know. Oh, okay. Sorry, Gladys.
Yeah, whatever.
I was a little surprised that game was close at halftime. Honestly, I thought they just destroyed the Washington, and they wouldn't really need to. And like the final score kind of looked like it, but it was mostly the second half. So
yeah,
it was all second half.
So now we're gonna go to the receiver props or receiving yard props. There's a tight end in there. Actually, there's a running back in there too. So the reception props. So again, in the poll, it's all over. Diggs at 4.5 yards, Sanders at 55.5 yards, Henry at 13.5 yards, Berkser at 2.5 receptions. I can't even remember what I voted on this one.
I don't think I voted. I didn't see that one. Sorry, Dan.
I think I voted for either Diggs or Sanders. I can't remember which one.
I voted for Henry over 13.5. Because even one reception, he's going to get the 13.5. That guy's going to take. He's going to. They might get to him after 5 yards. He's going to carry him for 8.5. So, Derrick Henry in space is a scary prospect. One reception could be it. So I just felt like the safest idea of
tied to that combined over under, right? If you're going over on that combined, he's going to get enough receptions to kind of make that work.
There it is.
So
right there. But I think Sanders at 55.5 is quite honest. I think that's honest. Diggs at 84.5 to me is low. I think he can go over. And Ferk's at 2.5. Like it feels like he might be okay with Julio and Brown back. Like if that makes sense. If it was just him and you think, oh, he's going to get targeted a lot, they tend to just we're just going to go to Derrick Henry instead. But with
I actually did vote Henry in the poll. I looked it up. I did actually take Henry. So there you go. I agreed, Dan.
Yeah, there we go.
I just forgot I agreed. But I like most of those lines over. I'm not crazy about Ferkser just because get him 3 catches. Like, you can't really bank on that any week. It might happen, but I mean, he might get 2, and then the third target goes to Michael Pruitt. Like, I think he's that's not a Ferkser's someone I've kind of I avoided him completely in fantasy this year. I didn't.
How about the hype?
But then he's gotten 3 catches every week. He's gotten 3 catches every week. So,
oh my god, got to get Ferkser this offseason. Got to go get him. There's no Jonnu Smith. Go get Anthony Ferkser. He's got the athletic attributes. My God.
I got way more Jeff Swain and Michael Pruitt on my teams just because I wanted to hedge against all that, because like Ferkser was robbing touchdowns from Jonnu Smith last year, except the game when Jonnu Smith missed, then suddenly Pruitt was taking the touchdowns from Ferkser. So like, it's one of those with Ferkser, he does well when you don't expect him to.
To be fair, that's par for the course with the Falcons and Arthur Smith, right? Because when you think it's a Kyle Pitts week, Lee Smith pops up.
Guys, we've talked about Anthony Ferkser for 3 minutes, which is 2 minutes and 58 seconds, longer than anybody should ever talk about Anthony Ferkser. Gladys, what did you want to say?
Do we think that Derrick Henry is going to get more than 50 rushing yards this game? Like, they've held running backs
I think so.
really well. And I know it's Derrick Henry.
I do, just because I think he's different. He's just a different breed.
Derrick Henry's not a running back. He's an animal.
So in order for Titans to win, Derrick Henry has to have over 100, or Ryan Tannehill has to throw for more than 3?
That's fair.
Probably both, to be honest.
Good question. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Both.
It won't hurt. It wouldn't hurt if both did it, right?
This would be a good start.
Tannehill, I think Tannehill more so. I think they're going to need to keep up to a degree. I really like Buffalo.
I think what they really need to do is their defense needs to show up, because they've been pretty atrocious. So like, that's probably the biggest thing. I don't think any of this other stuff's going to matter if their defense keeps playing the way that they have. I think the Bills are just going to find some way to exploit that, and then Tannehill and Henry could go over, and they're still going to lose 38-31 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking up. I'm looking up Derrick Henry's career game log, and over the 3 seasons, he's failed to hit 50 yards rushing twice. One was they lost 16-0 against Denver in. This is 2019. He only had 28 yards on 15 attempts. That's pretty atrocious. After that, it was a 20-7 loss to where he only had 44 yards rushing. This is again 2019. Over the last 2 years, he's had 2 games of yards. One of them was Week 1 against the Cardinals this year, and then one was against the Titans last year, 57 yards. But like
the Bills, yeah.
I think he's locked in to get rushing. Like it was 2 years ago, in a game where they scored 0 points, he failed to get 50 yards rushing. So
yeah, I'm
like,
just not betting against
that's happening here. So
very hard to bet against him.
I'm okay.
I guess the game has started. We could probably get out of here. Bye. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Do a proper outro. Well, does anyone have any other topics they want to bring up, or any other thoughts about this game, or any fantasy thoughts really?
Happy birthday, Dan!
I think. Thank you. I think Michael Thomas coming back this week is a big deal if he comes back. I don't know if the docs.
I'm hearing I've heard.
Doesn't look like
I know Ross Jackson
might be next week.
Whatever it is.
Ross Jackson
even
reported.
knowing that he's close.
What are you going to get though? He was the wide 5 in points per game last year. Like,
you're not going to get
the same
Harris
injury he dealt with last year. Do we know? I'm not banking anything on Thomas. I had 1 share of him in fantasy this year, and it was a league I actually put him on IR, and in that league, it's IR is a permanent. Put a player on injured reserve and RSO. They're there for the entire year unless you're like if your league has specific bylaws, you can have designated players to return. But if they don't, that player's on IR. He's done for the year. So I've got 0 Michael Thomas in my lineups this year, and I'm fine. I'm not banking on him doing well at all. Avoided DFS, especially his first week.
Given your situation, what I would say is the price is so low and his talent is so high. It's kind of worth taking a shot on it, because he's essentially box office poison at this point. Like, if you drafted him, then you probably paid too much for him because he was going way too high, even with the injury. But this is kind of right in line with what we were thinking as far as this timeline, at least what we were discussing in the beginning of the year. And now it's kind of come to fruition. But a lot of people have grown impatient, or they've had other issues where they had to drop him, or they unloaded him because he didn't come back in 3 weeks, like some people might have speculated on. But, he's still a really, really talented wide receiver. regardless of who the quarterback is, and he's really cheap to acquire at this point because the public perception is in the sub basement. So those are the players that I really get excited about going for because they're box office poison. They're cheap to get, and you could actually get something. If you get nothing for them, you didn't pay much anyway, but you took a shot. That's kind of the way I look at it.
So for all you haters, Anthony Peterson just had 11 yards receiving.
Who?
Well, there's one catch.
One catch.
Just needs 2 more.
Yards.
Just 2 more for that over.
That's 59 catches if you go by the minute.
Oh,
I got one last question. I got one last question for you, fine folk.
Okay.
I should have put this in the show sheet. 2 weeks till the trade deadline. Deshaun Watson, what's going on?
They're not going to trade him.
Grab the bench with both hands, baby. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
Does Miami do it? Does Miami do it?
No.
I don't think it's the other team. I don't think Texas, for whatever reason, is going to get rid of him. They do not want to cave in, if you will. It's not even about playing now. I think it's all about, who has the bigger balls, and Texans want to prove they do. So I don't think they're going to trade him.
That contract of his was nice this year to move on from. It gets pretty aggressive after that. You'd think maybe. I'm just asking the question. 2 weeks to go. We've just lost Russell Wilson for an extended period of time.
Wow.
Baker Mayfield's hurt.
Think of that. They don't have
Philly,
it's not just a player. I mean, the NFL could still suspend him. He could still go to jail. The public, with everything that's been going on in the league, I'm not going to mention any names, but a certain coach for the Las Vegas Raiders got into a little hot water for being kind of a jerk, to put it extremely mildly. I mean, the NFL they just can't get out of their own way when it comes to stuff like this. So it's like, if you're a team, you're going to acquire somebody like that. It's not a talent issue. It's an everything else issue. You turn half of the fan base or more against you by going out and to get the guy, and he might not even play because the NFL could still suspend him, or he could go to jail, or any number of other things could happen. So I don't think he's going anywhere.
So he's going to the Raiders. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me as far as it being reclamation projects for a lot of guys. It's definitely their history. But I don't think he's going anywhere this year until this whole thing is adjudicated. And all those other reasons that Gladys said are perfectly valid too, because they want to get, they have a lot invested in him, and they have a price, and no one else wants to seem to meet it. They want to try to do buy low offers, and I just don't think it's happening. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think there's also a scenario where some team, kind of goes behind the NFL's back and trades for him, and then they'd say, okay, well, now we're going to put him on the exempt list. So great job. So that's a possibility too.
I don't know about that one. I think if the NFL put him on the exempt list, they would have done it already.
They would have done it
to me, we're fine. Just leave this year. If there's any suspension that's going to come from him,
but if they trade him, then they could force their hand. It's like, okay, we're fine with the situation as it is. We kind of have this, you don't mess with us, we don't mess with you. You make them do not play every week, and we'll just kind of let it slide and let it play out. If he gets traded, that alters the game a little bit. They might have a different feel about it. They might be feeling a different way about it.
I don't know.
Do not want him the NFL doesn't want him on the field until this thing is taken care of. You agree or disagree?
Agree.
Disagree. I think if he's on the field, people are talking about
playing. Why isn't he playing?
Because the Texans don't want to play. Like, the Texans are the one holding this up. I think the NFL wants him because he's playing.
Nobody else cares. I don't know. I find that very hard to believe, my friend.
The NFL is very much.
The narrative is, what is he doing on the field, right? You use that as distraction, right? That, people focused on the play. The more he's not playing, the more all people can talk about is that. So I think from the perspective from the league, I think the NFL would rather him be playing than not playing.
No.
I'm sorry.
We gotta agree to disagree there. I know we're running our show. I'm 180 degrees in the other direction there. We have no common ground here.
But if that's the case, then why not put a list? That would solve everything. They're saying no. Him being on the exempt over the Texans, that would help them. It'd give them clarity. They'd save all the cap space, I think, too. So it's actually not the Texans a disservice by not putting them on the exempt list. So,
in fairness, we can't assume rationality with the NFL because they've kind of done this before. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm just saying it's it makes sense in a vacuum, but we're dealing with an organization that hasn't exactly shown clarity of thinking in a lot of areas. So We can't all of a sudden like just pull this one thing out and say, hey, why isn't the NFL doing the thing that makes the most sense? I don't know, because that hasn't really historically been what they do. I don't know what the reason is. I don't know the legalities of it. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't. The question was, and I don't want to make it into an emotional thing, I don't think he's going anywhere. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's what I think.
And I kind of tend to agree with you, but for a different reason. I think what Gladys said is right. I think it's the Texans, and not even that they don't want to move him stubbornly. I think their price is just too high. No team is willing to pay what they want. And frankly, I mean, if Deshaun Watson's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, there shouldn't be a price too high to pay. So,
yeah,
that's
the price is that you have all these women coming out saying that he did things that he shouldn't have done. That's the price. That's the bottom line. If you once it's determined whether it's true or not, then I think the price lowers. But you can't, the NFL can't, and the Texans can't put someone on the field who has an ongoing case against him where women are saying that he acted inappropriately to them.
23 or 24.
I think the Texans would. I think the Texans would put him out on the field if they could. That's the difference.
I disagree.
I think the NFL would step in at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know. The fun thing about it is we can talk about it, but none of us are ever going to know, and I guess we'll find out at some point. This will all get.
I'm still holding him on my.
At some point.
I'm still holding him on my Scott Fishbowl roster. That's in the off chance something happens.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got a freaking kicker on that team. So if I need to drop anyone, it's the kicker. So like, I'm fine with the bench. I'm fine wasting that bench spot all year. Just the upsides there. If he does get on the field, he instantly becomes a top 10 fantasy quarterback. Right?
No argument there. Dolphins. That's just the same.
I think if it's anyone, I think it's the Dolphins. Tua's not. I mean, they're not winning games with Tua. They've won a game with Jacoby Brissett. I think if it's any team, because I think the thought Dan with the Seahawks, but I don't think they have the ammunition. They've given up all their first for Jamal Adams.
I don't think the Seahawks at all. I hate it because they've just. We always say it with Dynasty, right? We always say if you're going to tank, be the first team to tank, right? Philly lose, there goes Zach Ertz out the door straight away, right? They're only 2 games off. Really a wild card in the NFC. Never mind the East, the NFC. They may be 2 games behind. But they just got rid of a club legend after a loss to send them to 2-4. They have 3 first-round picks, all within the top 12. I don't know. I'm just saying, if they were that sold on Hurts, they wouldn't get rid of Zach Ertz. I'm just saying. It just seems a bit. I don't know. There's something about that bothered me.
What do you guys think? You think he's moving or not? Kyle, you said no. Gladys, you said no. Dan, you think he's going anywhere in 15 days? Yes or no?
Philly would be stupid enough to do something because Philly are just dumb. They're not great, are they?
Nice.
As a Giants fan, but you are correct.
Giants fan viewpoint of the city of brotherly love, but I'll allow it.
I know where the air is cleaner, my friend. Listen, I don't think so, but it was just interesting to see that 2 weeks to go, Philly just started moving pieces. Hurts, he's a great fantasy player, but there's a difference between being fantasy viable and NFL viable. Daniel Jones is a great fantasy asset, not a great quarterback in the NFL. It's just one of those things. So sure. I found that interesting to just to bring it up because 2 more weeks to go. The Houston Texans aren't winning many more games. The Eagles have decided probably that they're probably not going to win many. They'll win because they've got talented players like Hurts, Smith, Sanders, Goddard, and all the rest. They're a talented team. I won't take anything away from the players. But it's just one of those things where, if they're comfortable getting rid of Zach Ertz, which, he probably could have gone in the offseason, maybe this is their way of punting the year at 2-6.
Maybe.
I mean, it seems like they've been trying to trade him for the last 12, 15 months, right? So it seemed like this might have Cardinals than the Eagles. This was finally a team was desperate enough to trade for Zach Ertz. They've been trying to shop him forever, right? So this was just Cardinals just needed him, right? So this I don't know that says as much about Philly as it
became an issue.
I think the real key with Philly is, Dallas Goedert on his contract. I know that there was extension talks, and that's all gone until after the season. What if from both completely? Everyone was talking okay, Zach Ertz is finally gone. This means Goddard long term. But what if you do?
But that's the crazy thing. If they move on from Goddard as well, what are you doing to Jalen Hurts? But that's taking
next
away
year, maybe
arguably.
taking yours replacement.
Arguably, like I like Devonta Smith. He's good. I like him. But so far, his two best players have been Ertz and Goddard. And if you're not going to renew the other after you've moved on the former, more to say, that to me is that's interesting to me to see the move on from Ertz, maybe not renew Goddard, and now you've got Jalen Hurts with, Jalen Reagor, who can't catch a cold, Quez Watkins from out of nowhere, and Devonta Smith, who has no help at all. And they don't want to run the ball. So Miles Sanders is out there doing nothing as well. So very interesting to see what they're doing to build around a team. Maybe they're clearing cap space, for example. Maybe that's something they're doing to bring in a guy who's carrying a $40 million tag in 2022. I'm just saying.
Aaron Rodgers?
No, he's going to be a Giant. He's going to be a New York Giant next year, my friend.
No, he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. He loves Mike Tomlin.
All right.
He loves him.
Yeah. I've been saying he's going to Miami now, so I'm going to stick with that. But apparently I'm saying every quarterback's going to Miami.
Kyle. You are sending everyone to Miami. You cannot do everyone is going to Miami in your
More quarterback controversies in Miami. Let's get a few of them. But I think it's crazy though. These last two off seasons, 2019 and 2020, we saw a lot of quarterback movement, free agents. Next year might not be the exact same case because it's going to be all through trades. Ross, Watson, maybe Russell Wilson, like all three of those guys are under contract. And all could get traded next offseason. And the thing teams are waiting for is the price lower on Watson, not because of any other fact other than there's multiple options available. There's three guys to trade for. So suddenly the Texans can't be he's price because then everyone's just going to go. Everyone who wants the quarterbacks will go for the cheaper teams. There might also be more than looking for quarterbacks to trade for. So supply and demand.
That salary cap comes up next year as well. But then you got to look at other guys. Like it was funny. Obviously, it's horrible what happened in Las Vegas the last couple of weeks. I was half certain that the Raiders are moving on from Carr based on his contract situation next year. I thought he's a guy they could get rid of. You look at Kirk Cousins as well. There's another guy. There's a bunch of guys. I think Tannehill might be in the last year of his existing deal with the Titans as well. So there's a bunch of dudes that could be attainable with a higher salary cap next year. It's, you look at, again, like the Giants, they have 2 first-round picks. I was messing around on the Draft Network today. At the moment, they're both inside the top 10. So, like, that to me is interesting. Like, they have that sort of cap. Obviously, the Bears could do more, and that's the 10th pick at the moment. They're at 3-3. However, they do worse. Giants are in business. Philly could be in business with those 3 picks. Very interesting at that point as well. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a couple teams that have the ability to make moves. Miami's another as well, I think. I understand. I'm not sending him to Miami. I don't think he's going to Miami. But there are a lot of quarterbacks that could be had, whether it is Watson or Rodgers or whoever else. I don't know. The way that Philly have been moving players, and they never actually sold on Hurts. I think he might be an Eagle. That's my gut feeling.
Where's Izzy?
Regardless if it's...
Where's Izzy?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's right. He never showed up. We do appreciate everyone who did, whether it's Gerson, Richard. Appreciate you all. But yeah, would love to hear from Izzy as always.
Izzy's out at FanDuel Sportsbook out at behind the racetrack with the book.
I think that's again. That last part was not so much relevant yet, but again, I think maybe I'll expect a lot of movement next year. Dan, one thing I will say, like, whether it's Watson or not, it seems like the Eagles are mentally preparing to move on from Hurts. They're giving you the shot. The team's awful, but if you can play amazing with this awful team, then you've kind of sold the guy. But anything short of that, they can move on pretty easily. So
I think he's going to lose.
Curious, Jalen Hurts goes too.
Yeah, he's definitely upped his stock. Like if they want to get rid of him, his price would be higher than it would have been at the beginning of the year.
And if let's say Houston does trade Watson to the Eagles, I don't think Houston wants Jalen Hurts back, right? Like they probably want the pick. They can build the rookie from the ground up, or just build around Davis Mills, so they're probably one of those where. Like, if the Eagles trade for Watson, Hurts might get stuck as the backup there and then, lose a bunch of fantasy value, too. So that's kind of the risky thing with Hurts in Dynasty is that he's not 100% certain going to be a starter next year.
Yeah, that's been the risk with him the whole time.
Detroit have a few picks up their sleeve as well, and I'm not so sure that Hurts wouldn't be that. He would be a big upgrade over Goff. So Hurts in a place like Detroit could be interesting, with an offensive line that looks pretty good. DeAndre Swift, Hawkinson, that's already half established. I'm just saying that, that it doesn't seem like they're sold on him, and moving guys like Hurts, who are reliable and helpful. The guy's a legend around the club. That I was kind of shocked. Like, I wasn't shocked in the offseason when they said, we might be moving on. It's a contract thing. It was a numbers thing. Why let him play 6 games? Like, it made minimal. I understand, we think we can go on a run. I get it, but that deadline is still, in 15 days, and they still probably would have moved him, which was just delaying the inevitable. So,
anyway, but inevitably we do have to head out here, closing an hour. I'll put all the Twitter accounts back up on screen. But for those listening in audio, we've got Gladys at Gladys L. Tyler, Dan at the B League Says, James Freddy at TFS Doc, the fantasy sports doc, for those that care about abbreviations, and I'm at Senra Says. Thanks, everyone, and buy the book. Any final messages for the listeners of the 2-point conversion this week?
No.
Nothing. That's it. You got nothing?
No.
All right. Well, then my final message will be goodbye, everyone. Enjoy the Bills-Titans game. See y'all next week.
Go get Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, I like it. All right. Have a good week, everyone. Enjoy.
Thanks, guys. See you next